Hello.
You are.
Couple of weeks, and the first 10 days I had to go into the quarantine because I came from a high-risk country, namely the United States. But now I'm freer and I'm very happy. I would like to start with give my thanks to Stefan and Dennis and Brian and the whole Matteo Ricci Institute for organizing this conference. I think it's very important, and it's great that we can discuss and have that conversation over continents. I would like to also thank Bruno Frey for his thoughtful presentation right now. I fully agree that it is not enough to think about where we have to go in the new paradigm, but also what kind of institutions are necessary to make that that journey efficiently, and so I cannot more agree with him what he said about those. I also am familiar with the Catholic Church, and I'm happy that he could see some positive developments, also with some critical remarks about John Paul II. What I would like to do is, or my topic, and this is where to go. So within the limitations as emphasized by Bruno Frey, where to go, and I just am in the process, or I wrote a new book on corporate responsibility for wealth creation and human rights. And it will come out next in December with Cambridge University. And so in my preparation, my email I sent to all the participants, I explained that far too much, I think, but I would like to give you a little bit background about that, because when I started business ethics, or the interest in business and economic ethics, it was thanks to a trip to India, and in 1970. And so I realized how that world in India, and poverty and development and third world country challenges are much different from what we have experienced here in Switzerland and also in Europe after the Second World War. And so I thought I need to study economics. And I did so, and I did a PhD in Fribourg. And then I had the chance to go first to America, and was invited to China. And in the 1980s, Deng Xiaoping, or there was that saying, to get rich is glorious. Now, I wanted to find out, was it really Deng Xiaoping who said so? And a friend of mine in Shanghai said, no, he did not say so, but he did not deny it, but he meant so. And so I learned how is it important to create wealth in a country like China, and also worldwide. That is a little bit background, my journey. And so in my book, I have three parts. Two are macro perspectives. The first is how to understand wealth creation in a comprehensive sense, not just making money or improving, increasing economic or financial capital in a comprehensive sense. The second macro perspective is not so new, but it is about basically business and human rights, an important issue we are currently discussing right here in Switzerland for the so-called concern responsible initiative. And then the third part of my approach is what are the implications of those macro perspectives for the ethics of business enterprises. Now, as I said, I don't have time to go all in this, this is not necessary, but I would like to emphasize a couple of points. What does it mean creating wealth in a comprehensive sense? You know that Adam Smith published that famous book in 1776 on the wealth of nations. And as an economist, we go back to that and think about what the economics and the purpose, and there are lots of different opinions, of course, but I would like to well, jump into our present day. And as I said, I was asking myself and talking with my Chinese friends, what is China doing in the 1980s and 90s? And so a much broader understanding of wealth creation was applied in China. Now, I distinguish 7 features, and that's pretty comprehensive, but I would like to say a few words to some of those features. I also went then through the list of our presentations, and we have, I think, about 23 or 24 presentations, and I noticed that many actually talk about those aspects about wealth creation or also human rights, and that will be also our discussion after the third presentation this afternoon, when we have 15 minutes to exchange some views on that. But for instance, Emmanuel Chewbacca talks about ethical outlook on environmental pollution. And in my terms, that would be a question basically first about natural capital, what we get from nature and what we could give back to nature. Or Franz Gassner talks about ethical investing, the invisible hand, so investment not just in financial assets, but in human capital, social capital, natural capital as well. Or there is Ip Bo Kung talking about Confucianism and sustainable business, how from a Confucian point of view we can move towards a broader understanding of wealth creation. Kilala Bayani, her contribution is about how to address disasters, and I think that's a very important question to understand public goods and public bads and how to address that. Another contribution is Sander Steens on the role of marketing, and here also I'm actually a member of the marketing department at the University of Notre Dame and learned a lot from my colleagues in marketing how it can be made environmentally responsible. So here again is a connection. Finally, or Sandy and Jenny and Carlos from Matteo Ricci Institute talk about the gaming tourism, and I think here all 4 types of capital are involved. And so Andrew, about cooperative economy, how economic and social capital and private and public goods should be considered together. And finally, Mike Thompson on socialization of capitalism, which is, I think, many good thoughts to go in the right direction. These are, I tried to find common ground. I did that also in terms of human rights, but we don't have time to do that now. I would like to say a few words now about some of those features, about 4 types of capital. Recently, I read an interesting book by Colin Meyer from Oxford. The title is Prosperity, Better Business Makes the Greater Good. And he, similar to my approach, he talks about to take seriously natural capital and economic financial capital. And because we, in neoclassical and traditional economics, we don't account for the environmental impact, also the meaning of a profit is extremely limited and misleading, actually. I couldn't agree more what he develops in his book. A second point, which is interesting, is when I distinguish those 4 types of capital with public and private goods. And each economist knows that Paul Samuelson in the 1950s and Musgrave discovered or used the topic of, or the concept of private goods, which are characterized by non-rivalry and non-exclusivity, and that the market institution cannot produce public goods. And I think Bruno Frey's presentation was very interesting when he says we should focus on problems regardless, or not totally regardless, but on problems which I think, like the corona pandemic, which is public bad. Everybody is affected, but it does not respect borders. And so to understand wealth as a combination of private and public wealth is very important, which can be applied to a city, to a local level situation, or to a global or a national or international or regional problem. The third aspect, well, I should say that when I fly from the United States to Switzerland and arrive in the airport Zurich, I'm always overwhelmed how well organized the traffic in Switzerland is, and how clean and how also beautiful many things are. And then I think, well, how is that possible? What makes a country rich? And well, the traditional answer is often, well, it's the accumulation of private wealth. So if we have more people with wealth in a country, it is richer. And but it is only individual wealth or private wealth. And I think that's a complete misreading of what's actually happening in the economy. Namely, that public wealth or public goods are necessary to produce private goods. In my book, or in my experience also, as I said, I was often in China and studied the situation of the economic reform in the 1980s. And there was, when Deng Xiaoping started the reform and opening up of the country, the question is they did not have a well-established legal system. But he asked the people to jump into the sea. So that means to do business in a private way out from the state-owned enterprises, and to do business and to trust that the money they make is not just taken away by Mao Zedong or the leader of China. And so that is one example of a trust in society or in the government, which is a public good, which is necessary to produce private goods. These are a couple of things. I also talk about the importance of Amartya Sen's capability approach and sustainability approach. When we focus on public goods, we need other institutions, which were mentioned also by Bruno Frey, pointing or focusing on different problems, but we need collective actors. And also the motivation cannot just be greed and self-interest, but other regarding motivations are very important as well. These are a couple of points, but I think we need to look at both important questions. Well, where should we go, and what kind of institutions, and also motivations, not only at the macro level, but also at the meso, at the organizational, and at the micro level of individual motivations. It is important. I think I'm out of time, and I would like to thank you for listening, and I look forward to our discussion.